This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we kick off 2 weeks of rom-coms to celebrate Valentine's Day, starting with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. We discuss how lust is like chocolate, but love is like a diamond. This movie shows how the games we play prevent us from getting the connection that we most long for. And in times of conflict, it's easy to bail, but love is forged by sticking it out when others would leave. Don't forget to water the love fern, and let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me on this Valentine's Day week, after Valentine's Day, but it's in the realm of Valentine's Day, is coming from Heart City, Hotlanta. Hey, Britt, how you doing?
Valentine's Day. I'm doing amazing, man. How are you?
Good. Yeah, we are busting out the rom-coms for Valentine's Day season. And it's weird because Valentine's Day, it's weird actually because Britt and I will be together on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we will.
And he'll be visiting. He's got a conference up here in Charlotte. So we'll be hanging out on Valentine's Day, but we wanted to do a couple rom-coms. We've got How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days this week. And next week we'll do When Harry Met Sally. We're actually on Valentine's Day. We're going to be discussing one of the best rom-coms of all time.
The standard, probably.
Yeah. So, but this one, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Oh, wait. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask, other than the obvious, any traditions or practices that you and your wife have that's not going to happen this year because you're here? But what do you guys do for Valentine's Day?
We usually just try to go to a dinner or something. I mean, we don't do anything super fancy. I am one of those people that I actually feel that it's more important to express that often through the year. So, I'll try to do
every day is Valentine's Day, baby.
Every day. Just try to do, often some flowers or try to go out on a date. I mean, my wife and I, it's not like this now, but for many, many years, even through 3 kids up, until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we had a date night every week. And that was something that we instituted early in our marriage because I am one of those sort of people that fills up my time quickly. And so it helped me to know that there was one night a week that we were going to have a date night. And it helped Becca to know there's going to be one night a week that we had a date night. And that we did that even before, like in our first maybe 6 months, year of marriage. And again, we stuck with it until a few years ago. The kids got a little older and stuff like that, but it was just really important to us. And so it wasn't a sacrifice, but it's something that has really helped us to know. And even if it wasn't going out, like the fact that someone would take the kids for a couple hours and we would even have dinner at home or whatever, that sort of thing, just some time together. So, yeah. What about you? What about you guys?
We tend to try to go out for dinner. This year, after you leave the house, we've been doing the HelloFresh, the meal delivery service. So they've been delivering 3 meals a week, and so they have a more special meal. So we're doing a 3-course meal that we'll cook together and have some wine. And normally we've gone out for a date or, like you said, we normally focus on the anniversary as being the celebration of our love rather than this random day in February that now apparently the Super Bowl is going to be hammering against. So And so that's going to be what future Valentine's Day and Super Bowl weekends are going to come to be. So when I told some guys yesterday, I was like, hey, we're going to do How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And pretty much anytime I mention this movie to any dude, it seems like this one is the, I hate to admit it, but that one I actually love. And that's for me. I call it my guilty pleasure. It's the movie that if it's on, it sucks me in and I end up watching it. The question is not why did we pick this movie? Because that's why it's a great rom-com. But what is it about this movie in particular that sets it out from other syrupy dreck that we don't typically watch?
As we'll get into it, I think that a lot of guys can relate to the struggle of wanting to have a relationship with a woman, but yet feeling like everything that's sacred to them is being turned upside down. So I think guys can relate to this, that women sometimes don't understand how important some of those things are to a guy. And I kind of have a list of all the things that she does, and she's doing them on purpose, right? I mean, she's doing them on purpose for the sake of the story and for the sake of that article that she's supposed to write. So she's doing it on purpose, but I think every guy, even my son was trying not to watch the movie. My son is 16 and he was trying not to watch the movie, and what happened? He'd go, oh no. And my daughters were watching it and they were covering their eyes. They were like, no, don't do it to him. And even they were realizing how horrible they're like, I know she's doing it on purpose, but oh, that's so horrible. Not that you should do things just because guys like them, but I think there's definitely a couple of these elements that sometimes women don't understand why they are important to men, and that they, it doesn't need to mean that they're never together. Or
I said, that friend Michelle, who doesn't seem to understand why crying after sex might be a bad thing, or telling him she loves him and wants to marry him on the second day might scare him off. The
second day, right? Yeah. So those sort of things. So I think it's relatable to guys, and obviously it's a romantic comedy, so it has those elements that I think appeal to women too. And they're two great, very engaging actors.
Right.
I mean, Kate Hudson is amazingly beautiful. She's a great actress. And Matthew McConaughey, I mean, I wouldn't kick him out of bed. I mean, yeah, that guy is really handsome. No, I'm kidding.
Where's your hand between these pillows?
But he's a good looking guy, very funny, very personable. I mean, you kind of have a man crush on him. You want to have him on the podcast.
Dude, today I have to actually tell you, today I messaged him on Facebook telling him I want to have him on the podcast.
No, you didn't.
I did.
That's amazing.
Because I'm like, I really loved Green Lights, and it's really a powerful story. And you guys should read, if you haven't read Green Lights, you should. It's a great story of sort of following the path and sticking to it and all this, and stepping out in faith in a lot of ways.
But even when you see him on an interview, he's very engaging, and he's very likable, and he's very fun, and he tells great stories. So I think that's part of it too. And they have great chemistry, and so that's part of it.
Yeah. So the premise of the movie, if you guys have lived under a rock and have never seen this, Kate Hudson her name is Andy Anderson. She works for a girl magazine called
Composure.
It's obviously a takeoff of Cosmo.
What?
What? It seems close enough. They probably should have had to pay Cosmo a little something for their trademark rights or whatever,
right?
Licensing. And then Ben who played by Matthew McConaughey, is a advertising agent. And it's interesting because they're both pigeonholed, but want to be more. Andy is the how to feng shui your apartment, how to talk your way out of a ticket, how to do this and that. But she wants to write about stuff that matters. She wants to write about politics and women's rights, and not just clothes and laser surgery and all this stuff. She has big dreams. And so that's who she is. Ben is currently the jock's jock. He sells basically beer and sports equipment. That's his marketing gig. But he wants to get into luxury items and specifically diamonds. With all this stuff, it's interesting that you see these two parallel stories knowing they're about to meet, because you've got Andy on the one hand, who's got a friend who's, like I mentioned, Michelle. She does everything wrong, and the guys always leave, and she thinks it's because she's fat, and she's not. It's just she's kind of psychotic when she acts this way. And so Andy said, well, I'm going to do a how-to of doing all these things that my friend does to see at what point the guy would leave. Meanwhile, Ben gets challenged because they're like, you don't know anything about selling diamonds and these luxury. It's not about quick and easy and sports and fireworks. There's a difference. There's a nuance. And so the first clip I'm going to play is the scene in the bar at the very beginning where Ben is there with the Judys, the two women who run the luxury marketing campaigns, and their boss. And Ben's trying to say that he can do it. And the Judys, the women there, are trying to tell him what makes marketing diamonds and specifically more like love. And in the process, kind of explain a little bit about what love is.
Selling a diamond to a woman is like making her fall in love. She has to feel giddy, desirous, adventurous, and desperate.
Take a look around this room, Philip. Most of the women in this bar are looking for just that.
Exactly. The skills required to market diamonds are the same as those needed to make a woman fall in love, yes.
I'm not talking about lust. A woman in lust wants chocolate. A woman in love wants diamonds.
Yeah, I'm not talking about lust either, ladies. I'm talking about deep, meaningful, head over heels, his and her towels, let's grow old together, LOVE. Look, I love women. I do. Whether they're 4, 40, or my 88-year-old grandmother, I respect women, right? And I also listen to women. And that's why I can sell myself to any woman, anywhere, anytime.
Make a woman fall in love with diamonds, Benjamin? Or with you?
Either one.
That's cocky, Ben.
No, not cocky. Confident.
I'd like to see you prove that.
You would.
Enter Andy, who, interestingly, I hadn't noticed this before, but the Judys had met Andy earlier that day.
Right.
The women knew what project Andy was working on. So they're setting up Ben to fail.
Right.
Because they're kind of manipulative bitches.
They're the evil stepsisters in the movie.
Oh, yeah. Super evil. And we'll see at the end, like, they don't even care that they lost the account. They want to mess up the relationship.
Right.
So they're entering this, but that idea that a girl in lust wants chocolate. A girl in love wants a diamond.
But let's look at that for a second. How are diamonds created? Pressure, heat, time. Here you have something very beautiful, a diamond, but it's beautiful the same way that a pearl is beautiful. It's like it takes time, it takes heat, it takes pressure, and that's what is kind of being set up in this movie. Is that they're both committed to this idea of trying to do something. He's trying to love her no matter what, or try to get her to love him no matter what. So he's willing to go through anything, and she's trying to lose him no matter what. And so that forced time and pressure, even though it's over 10 days, it's not a marathon. It's over 10 days, like that forces them to engage when both of them would have probably bailed at some point.
Well, in that comparison to lust to chocolate, because chocolate doesn't last very long, especially in the heat.
Right.
It makes a mess. And whereas a diamond is a lasting thing. It's not something it's a non-consumable. I have a hard time giving consumables as gifts because it's like, well, once it's gone, then it's gone and there's no more gift.
Mm.
And so a diamond is like you said, one is how it's formed, but the other is the long lastingness of it, which is one of the things that you mentioned as in our pre-show. It's one of those things that you talked about as we were getting ready, of this idea that they stuck it out when all others would leave. You know, the first night they get together, they hang out, they go to the Knicks game, and they enjoy each other's company. They see, and they are both authentic people as much as can be. And then as Andy says, the switch turns. She becomes just a little crazy. You know, she asked him to get a drink during the last minute of the game. Then, and one thing after another, she goes over there for dinner. Yeah, like you said, you had this whole thing. So she calls him at work and does the baby talk thing. She talks to him she's like, let's go to this chick flick marathon, and then talks the whole time. He gets in a fight, like somebody hits him because she keeps talking. She brought all this stuff to the apartment, like a baby fern. It's her love fern. And this is like day 2. You know, and she's moved in. She's got a new pink comforter, pink toilet seat cover. He cooks this amazing dinner, the lamb chops. Oh my gosh, those looked awesome.
Yeah, they did.
And she says, I'm a vegetarian. And she starts like singing Mary Had a Little Lamb. So they go to this vegetarian restaurant. She's sneaking into the kitchen to eat a burger or something and watch the game while he's out there. She's like, I can't eat in front of him because he says I'm fat. And so it's like all these girls, these women there in this vegetarian restaurant are giving him the stink eye, and he's just, but then probably the point at which the vast majority of men might have put up with this. And then they go back to his apartment and she starts to kiss on him, and they start getting a little frisky.
Does Princess Sophia come out and play?
Who's Princess Sophia? No. No, you're kidding me, right? Princess Sophia?
Little big. I don't know. We will find out.
Hang on a second. Hey, listen, you can't name my member Princess Sophia. It doesn't.
Yes, I can.
Listen. If you're gonna name my member, all right, you gotta name it something hyper masculine, okay? Something like a Spike, a Butch, a Kroll, the Warrior King, but not Princess Sophia.
What did she just say?
A Spike. You know what I mean?
No, after Spike.
Butch.
After Butch.
Kroll, the Warrior King.
Does Kroll, the Warrior King, want to come out and play? Oh, come on.
No. You know what? Due to intense humiliation, the king has momentarily abdicated his throne, okay?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I better get going.
So your premise was they stick it out when others would leave.
Yeah.
And I got to think that's a naming your member Princess Sophia would be a leaving this girl's crazy moment.
Right.
But because of the bet and all that. But what is the value of sticking it out when others would leave?
Well, as I was mentioning before, C.S. Lewis calls the initial attraction, and it's really infatuation. I think that's what he calls it. He doesn't call it lust. He calls it that the initial infatuation is a kind of a trick to get us to be committed to another person. And then now that we're committed, we have to stick together, not because it's fun, but because we're committed. And his point, C.S. Lewis's point is that is when it becomes real love. That moment when we start sticking it out, not because it's fun and not because it's makes us feel good, or we think it's awesome, but when it's hard, when we stick it out, in those moments, then that's when we actually start loving another person. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to self-sacrifice. We have to learn to have honest, real conversations. Our own personalities are challenged. Our own flaws are exposed. What we really want is connection. But in order to be connected and intimate with another person, we have to be exposed. And of course, sex is the ultimate sort of expression of that, which is why sex happens in marriage, right? Because that's the ultimate oneness and exposure on a physical level. But it happens emotionally too. Like, we have to get through that. And here's the thing is that a lot of times, especially in our modern culture, a lot of people give up on relationships, or they never even get to that point, whether it's, the hookup culture or whatever, is they never even get to the point where they have to go through a hard time with somebody.
Right. And Ben he's right. Mr. One Night Stand. And he's so he described 10 days as a marathon, and the married guy's like, you think 10 days is a marathon?
That's a marathon.
Like, okay, maybe not.
But he was treating it like it was so difficult for him, because he kept wanting to. He's like, that's it, I'm out. That's it. But because of the bet he made, right, and because he wanted, all that stuff, and so he stuck it out. And so people in all sorts of relationships, whether that's friendship or marriage, people bail when it starts getting hard, because our culture has taught us that the infatuation is actual love. And so then when it gets hard, we're not infatuated with with that person anymore. And we have to choose to love them. Choosing to love someone is actual love. That's love, because God chose to love us. God's not infatuated with us. He knows exactly how awful we are. But he chooses to love and sacrifice for us. And so that's actual. I was reading the scripture the other day, and I thought it very interesting where I think it's in 1 John, but maybe you'll look it up later, where he says, this is how we know what love is, that he died for us. In other words, that while we were sinners, he died for us. That's actually how we know and understand what love is. When it gets hard, when you have to make a sacrifice for the good of another person, that is actual love. And that doesn't happen in the infatuation stage, because it's new and it's exciting. And I love those times. And I still like to be romantic, and it's awesome. And so people give up on God for the same reasons, because we have a Christianity that has somehow convinced people that God is out to just bless us all the time, and it's always going to be awesome. If you just follow God, you'll have a better life. And then people start following God and they don't have a better life. The devil really starts to attack, and then they start really. But
I thought it was like listening to a country music song backwards. You get your wife back, your truck back, your dog back.
And there is joy and there is blessing, but it's not an infatuation. Is we have to get into real love. And that's pretty much the arc of this movie, is that because they were forced to engage each other, even though they were both being horrible to some degree, they were both playing games and lying, like they were forced to stick it out. And I just don't, and I think people have to realize that's where the real connection comes from. That's where we actually get the sort of relationships that we want and we long for.
Yes, this movie is contrived. I can't imagine anybody actually doing any of this. However, you think of it from their specific perspectives. Ben is coming in. I can make any woman love me. Very self-serving. In 10 days, we've got to show up at this party, and my boss is going to talk to her and know if she's in love with me or not. And if that was just any random girl at a bar, Mr. Salesman, Mr. Matthew McConaughey, would, I'm sure, have hypnotized her, would have won her over, and would have maybe not won the bet, but it would have all been one-sided. Right. Because he would have schmoozed her, marketed her, done his advertising slogan. He would have won her over, but he would not have been won over.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that he was forced almost to do the relationship in reverse, of, as we said, you can't share all your crazy right up front. Right. You've got to dole out your crazy bit by bit, because Andy is doing all this crazy stuff. She talks to his mom. She makes this creepy ass
the thing about their
family
kids.
album photoshopping of, I put our faces in and this came out. And he's like, you don't want to look at her kid. Buys him a dog, or buys them a dog. Took over the bathroom, said, oh, I've got tickets, and took him to Celine Dion instead of game 3 of the NBA finals. Interrupts poker night. As we talked about, like invading of the sacred spaces, which is what honestly marriage does, because you come together and then the way that you were used to doing things is no longer the way you're going to do it. So he would have been successful on the bet. Any other guy not in the bet, she would have run off very quickly.
Oh, easily.
Like 2 days max.
Day 2, easily.
It could have been day 1. Get me a drink. Screw you. I'm watching the game.
Yeah.
And so this contrived, manipulated, but we love these things, right? Where it's a bet that you can do this, make the pretty girl or the ugly duckling girl look awesome, or all these movies where, it was a bet, or they were hanging out for money. What was that one? I don't know, all these 80s movies that you love that
all of them
sorts
all.
of, I know.
Oh, Can't Buy Me Love was one.
Can't Buy Me Love. Yes, that's the one I was thinking of.
I love that one.
But this idea that sets up this unlikely premise. There's no way that love would succeed in this weird setup. But because of the culmination and what you see, what I love in this is how there are glimpses.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to say that.
There are glimpses of who they are. Like Ben has seen real Andy, who is passionate, wants to be a writer. The first night she was herself.
Yeah.
He might have been a salesman.
No, he was kind of himself too, but yeah, a little bit of salesman. Yeah.
A little bit of a salesy, hit on me pitch sort of thing. But then as she gets the crazy side out, his desperation, his commitment comes out of, and honestly, if you've done this 10 days of stuff and you can make it and not kill each other on the back end, then yeah, you've got a pretty stable relationship. My wife and I, when we were married, I was super messed up, like lots of baggage from my previous marriage, lots of insecurities, lots of stuff from my previous 30 something years. To the point where she was at one point was like, we need therapy or one of us is going to kill the other one. And we went into therapy and we dealt with that. But driving through those things, moving through those, like you said, in the commitment phase, where it's like, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to make this work. I remember one of the most sort of the resonating moments of one of our therapy sessions was my wife was on one end of the couch crying, and the therapist was like, don't you see her crying because of what you've said? And it was me reacting out of being hurt.
Mm.
It sort of doesn't matter what she said or what she did. I'm responsible for my actions. Mm. And I kept throwing verbal spears and attacking her because I was hurt. And that doesn't make it right. Mm. And what you see in this movie, I think, is one of the probably reasons I love it is he takes all this crap that Andy gives him, knowing he's got to so he's cultivating and developing love out of necessity.
Oh, I was just going to add to what you're saying about the glimpses. I think you're right. You see the glimpses of who they really are, but you also see the glimpses of why I think women like this movie. So women in general crave security. And what that means is that no matter what I do, you're going to stick around. And the fact that she couldn't push him away, started to mess with her brain. Like, it started to really mess with her. Like, what is this guy's issue? Because she knows really well how to push guys away. Now, it doesn't go into her background a whole lot like it does with his a little bit, but like, she knows really well how to push a guy away, and she can't do it. And that's what happens with God too. That's what happens with God, is we try to push him away and he's like, no, I'm right here. I got it. And you're like, what's your problem? Like, anybody else would have bailed on me. And I think that's that security, and that's who we're supposed to be. It's Christ in the church. We are supposed to be that sort of husband to our wives, to show them that level of, security. Because I don't know about your wife, but sometimes my wife looks at me and was like, like, I'm sorry, I'm so crazy, and why are you still around? And I'm like, baby, like, why are you with me? Like, we start talking about it. But here's the thing about the security and seeking through it and getting past those conflicts and sticking it out and working those things out. See, here's the thing with infatuation. You think the sex is great in infatuation, in the infatuation stage, right? Go on your honeymoon. And then people go, but here's the thing. If you really get past, because what some people do, they just learn how to coexist. They don't really take those conflicts as an opportunity to grow closer. If you can take those conflicts and sticking it out over time as a way to become more intimate emotionally, what happens is the sex gets better. This is true. And I said this recently, and I had grown men look at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you, my wife looked at me and went, how does it keep getting better? And it's not because we're young and athletic anymore, right? Like, we've passed the infatuation stage. We've passed being, I can somehow hurt my knee in the middle of the night sleeping. I don't know how I do this, but like it's not like we're young and hot anymore. This is what our culture tries to tell us. This is the influence of porn on our culture. Okay. That it has to be this performance, that it has to be this yada, yada, yada thing. Right. But sex is, again, it's about emotional connection. And it is for guys too. As much as they want to not make it, it is for guys too. It's sometimes more than women. But I had to have an older guy, my mentor, tell me that. Like, I've been married for 22 years, and he told me, like, and don't believe them when they tell you the sex just goes away. Like, it actually gets better. And I'm like, I've never heard that. Every movie, every TV show, they've been married for 10 years and they never have sex anymore. And he asks and she turns him down. Like, like, you got this like game that they play. And it took somebody else giving me a different, but again, that's not all he modeled. What he modeled was he loved his wife and they forgave each other and they had a relationship and they had real conversations and they worked through conflict. Like, that's why what this movie is trying to show is actually really, really important. As silly as it gets and contrived as it is, and as it's fun, but diamonds are like, aren't they the hardest thing? Like like, no one can shake that love if you can get past that stuff.
So there's this scene where they sort of broke up very briefly. They get in a fight on an elevator, and Ben actually says, where's the other Andy? Where's that one who was fun and exciting and playful, not sort of the crazy person that she was exhibiting? She's like, so I guess we're through. And the door is closed and she's like, finally. Mm-hmm. But then he goes in, he's reminded of his commitment. I like that, the way of framing that. He's reminded of his commitment. So he rushes down the fire escape.
Listen, you forgive me, sugar puss. Look, I don't know what I was thinking. All right, I'm sorry. I am way out of line, Andy. Can you give me another chance?
Haven't you had enough?
Andy, look, I'm willing to do anything.
Get up.
I'll do anything, Andy. Look, what do you think about couples therapy?
Couples therapy?
Couples therapy. Look, Thayer up there, he's got this doctor. He says he's a hell of a guy.
No, I know a therapist who will work wonders with somebody like you, Benjamin.
Yes, that's what I need.
I will call and schedule an emergency session.
Baby, whatever it takes.
Kiss.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for understanding.
I love you, Banky. But I don't have to like you right now.
But that scene that she's like, haven't you had enough?
Man.
And the real her comes out briefly. Right. She's like, get up. Like she finds herself, like you were mentioning, attracted to him because he's pushing his way through all the bullshit. And by the way, we're about to talk about the best scene in the movie. The best
scene, absolutely. It makes the movie.
I don't have that because it's such a visual scene, but I loved what you said, that we treat God this way. Like we do this crazy stuff. We keep turning away. We keep looking to other gods and idols and however you want to frame it. And he's still there and he still pursues us. And we're getting into, in my Bible reading, we're getting into Numbers and what is going to conspire, what is going to happen in this book of the Bible is Israel is going to keep going away. Like they stretch a 2-week journey into 40 years, but through it, they complain about food. They complain about water. They want to go back to Egypt. Like the Israelites keeping like, I wish let's go back to Egypt, like trying to mutiny and return to Egypt. And meanwhile, at the end, you've got Balaam, who's been called in by the king of Moab to curse Israel, but he's not allowed to. Mm-hmm. God doesn't let him curse him. He blesses him. And the guy's like, what are you doing? I paid you to curse them. And he's like, I'm doing my best, but what comes out of my mouth is not me. And all the while, Israel's like going off. They're doing their own thing. They're grumbling. They're complaining. They're wanting someone else. They're wanting something else. And then, later on, they're going to say, we want a king. We don't want this. And no matter what the Israelites do, God still loves them. God still blesses them. That's why Hosea marries a prostitute to show God's love for us. Like we're like the prostitute going around, giving our heart to anybody. Oh, this feels good. Let's do that. Oh, it could be work. It could be family. I mean, family can become an idol. It could be sex. It could be, take your pick. The world is full of idols and things that we give our hearts to. And yet God is still there. And there's times where I think I feel like Andy is like, haven't you had enough? But the whole premise, the whole purpose is to bring us home. So they go to couples therapy, Andy and Ben, they go to couples therapy. It's one of her friends. It's all contrived. It's made to make him look bad and like antagonize him even more. How long have you been attracted to other men? It's like, what the? And he says something that the friend catches on to where he's like, says something about going home to Staten Island for the weekend. He's like, we just need to get away and just focus on us. But the whole idea was to bring her home. And that's really what God wants to do with us, is bring us home to where we can be our true selves, where we can be who we are. No bullshit. Like I said, I don't have that scene pulled because there's so much nuance in that, but they get home, kids are everywhere. It's noisy. They're playing this card game bullshit where it's basically like a adult level Go Fish. You're trying to get rid of all your cards. And Ben is the best out of all of them. Like he kicks their ass because what is it? He says the key is being able to read other people. Like from that moment through the returning home is the heart of the movie.
Well, and it's so important and it's so key. It really is one of the best scenes, and it really does make the movie because you're right, is that he takes her home to his family, and the family was like, he doesn't take anybody. He doesn't bring anybody here. Right. And there's so many great moments in that because she's really herself and he's really himself. And that's in the context of family. And it's a couple of things that I tell people when they start dating. And just by the way, if you're going to date, you shouldn't show everything right away. I mean, and it's not just because you look crazy. It's just there should be stages of that, of getting to know people and time and over time.
It's like an emotional striptease.
But you don't. So there's nothing wrong with that, and nothing wrong with not holding back, but just not being super vulnerable with everybody. Jesus wasn't super vulnerable with anybody. He would teach, and then those who were really committed to him, he'd pull them aside and really teach them. Like, oh, this is what I was really talking about. And they were like, why don't you tell everybody that? It's like, no. This is for the people who are really going to stick around.
It's the pearls before swine. You don't want to give all your good stuff to people who won't appreciate it.
And so when I tell people to as they're dating, I'm like, do as much as you can in groups, because anybody can pretend when it's just you two alone. And you can get really manipulative when it's just two people alone. And you can get in a lot of trouble when it's just two people alone. But when you're in groups, people cannot hide in who they are in a group. He's going to act like he really likes you, and he's going to pretend, and but here's what happens with women sometimes is they actually like the guy who's mean to everybody, but really nice to them. And it's like, no, he'll be mean to you at some point too. Like he's just playing it to get sex or whatever he wants to get. So I'm like, see how he acts with other people. See what his character is like around his mom, around his dad, around his, nieces and nephews. See what his character is like around other people in big groups. And if he treats other people kindly and takes care of other people, that's the guy you want. I've never heard anybody else tell people that, but I tell people that. And that's why I love this scene, is because she sees that he loves his nephew or whoever the baby is. And he changes a diaper or something. I mean, like he's almost maternal at times, but then he's also drinking a beer and he's, cussing people and he's giving people a hard time and they're playful with each other and they accept one another's flaws. And it's in that place where she learns who he really is. And then she feels comfortable to be who she really is. And it's awesome, man, the way they set it up, that the game was, the BS game, because they've been playing a game the whole movie. And now those walls have come down and you can tell it really touches her emotionally, because they're in the shower. And really what kicks it off is she's like, your mom really hugged me.
Everything all right? Okay?
Oh, no, it's more than okay. I love everything about this house. The noise, the smells.
Oh, well, the smells, that's Uncle Arnold, I mean. What's wrong?
It was just that when your mom hugged me today, she really hugged me. For winning a game of bullshit.
Sweetie, that's a good thing. Smile. Smile. Now, come on, give me a smile. Okay, that's good. That's it. You're scaring me.
That idea of family and home, breaking down the walls. Interestingly, C.S. Lewis also said something very similar in, I think, The Four Loves, when he's talking about friendship, as the people bring out different sides of us. Mm-hmm. So like I'd have coffee with my friend Patrick, and he and I would engage, and we met for coffee weekly for like months. And then we invited somebody else in, John, and the conversation shifted. But I got to know a side of Patrick that I would not have known if John wasn't there, because they talk about different things. They bring out different things. So when you have an immersive thing like home, like this family was. Like you can't be, you can't fake it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the idea of bullshit and being able to read people and know when they're telling the truth and when they're false. If you think about that in the context of the movie of Ben knew who Andy really was and didn't understand where this crazy person was coming from, but he knew who she was. She was also really good at the game. Like they were like, that's the lowest point total Ben's ever had. Like that was the moment, right, where they actually fell in love.
Mm-hmm.
Where they saw each other, where they accepted each other, where they became, I mean, they had sex in the shower, so they became one. But the other context of this, and we're heading to the big conflict where she finds out it's a bet. He finds out he's part of an article that she's writing, and they break up. And that great scene that I don't have time to play it about. He's like, your goal was to lose a guy, you just did, and she accuses him of you can't lose something you never had.
Mm.
But this idea that the games we play prevent us from getting what we really want. So you said that this was the big theme of the movie.
Yeah.
And so explain that, how this story worked to show that message.
Well, we play games for two reasons. Number one, because we think it'll get us what we want, but we also play games to hide who we really are, right? If someone really knew us, they wouldn't love us. So I have to act like someone you would like, right?
In order for you to hang around.
In order for you to stick around. But we also play games to get what we think we want. But what we want is real relationship. And so the playing of the game is fake. It's not real. And we have different agendas than of things that we aren't going to be satisfied by. One of my favorite moments in the movie, secondary to probably the home scene when they're playing the game, and it gets a little convoluted. It gets a little confusing there at the end. They could have written that a little better. But when they're at the party, and they're all dressed up and they're at the party, and Ben's boss goes to talk to Andy because the bet was she'll love you. It wasn't just that you can get a girl to go to the party. The bet was you can make a girl fall in love with you. And he comes back and basically tells Ben, you won. She loves you. And the look on his face, because he was happier that she loved him,
right,
than the fact that then getting the account. He thought his goal was getting this account. But when you saw his face, he actually was more satisfied and contented and joyful over the fact that this girl loved him.
Yeah, he celebrated. She loves me, not I got the account.
Right? Like when he says you won, it wasn't like, yeah, great. I'm going to make a whole bunch of money and I don't know, have a big name and, but no, it was, she loves me. And that's real value because people have real value. A lot of the games that we play are for stuff that doesn't have any value. Yeah. And so she had actual value and he learned that. But in order to learn that, he had to stick around when he normally would have bailed. As we go over the lies and truth sort of motif that I like to go over, like they both felt like they had to live a lie for various reasons. And part of the lies that they lived and that they were believing was what their goals were. There's nothing wrong with wanting a big account and stretching and having challenging yourself in your career. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to write about what really matters. There's nothing wrong with those things. But in order to manipulate people, in order to get those things, that was the lie, that those were more important. And so they both had to come to the truth that they were playing games and living a lie. And that caused conflict. It always will cause conflict, and you will feel shame and you'll feel temptation to run and bolt. We do it with God. God convicts us and the devil goes, see, he doesn't love you.
Right.
See, that's what happens, right?
Life's not as easy as we think it is. It gets hard. It gets ugly. It gets weird. And yeah, we're like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong.
I guess I was wrong. I guess God
didn't
doesn't
really
love
say.
me. Because he didn't call me to this because it's hard. No, I mean, like, no, you get the promised land, but guess what? You also have to fight the enemy to do it. Like all of that is part of it. And so that was the first lie. I mean, the first truth was that they had to come to the realization that they were playing games, and they had to process that. If that hadn't happened in the movie, we would not have liked this movie.
It would have cheapened the ending.
It would have cheapened the ending. But when they came to the truth about the fact that they were playing games, then they could say, okay, that was a lie and those are games, but what's real? I know I want to bail. I know I want to get away. I know I want to get out, but what's real? And this is something that we have to realize as married people, because we're going to get in conflicts. We're going to have a fight. We're going to disagree about something or hurt one another's feelings. What we have to do is say, what's true? Sometimes you have to stop in the middle of those hard conversations and say, well, let's start with what we know. I love you and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. You're not the enemy.
You're not the enemy. We're in this together, whatever it is. I'm telling you that statement alone diffuses most arguments.
I appreciate how much you've impacted my watching of the movies, because I do look for what truth are they believing? What lie are they believing? What truth is going to be revealed? So the truth gets revealed that it's all been a game. Mm-hmm. It was a bet. It was an article. So they go from believing the truth that they love each other to believing a lie like it wasn't real.
Right.
So they believe a lie towards the end. And that's that same thing when we're fighting with each other, fighting with our spouse, fighting with God. We believe that's why you have to do exactly what you said. What is the truth here? The truth is, like, I've had to say that when my wife's responded to something I said, I was like, I don't think you heard what I said. I love you. I'm on your side here. Let's start this over, reset, and then move forward. Yeah. Because you're responding in a way that's wasn't my heart for you. Wasn't what I was trying to. This, as they say in Anchorman, this escalated quickly.
Well, that escalated quickly.
So we go to the end, and Andy writes an article that says she lost a guy, that it was the worst mistake of her life because it was the only guy she ever really loved. And
well, she tells the truth in it.
Right. She tells the truth. And
her telling the truth gets him to tell the truth.
Yeah. And he pursues her. She realized, because she did it so that she would be able to write big, impactful articles, but then realize what it cost her because she couldn't. There's a Magritte painting. My wife and I, when we were in Spain, we went to a Magritte exhibit, and Magritte's her favorite artist. But it's a room, but the walls of the room are painted as the sky. When I saw that scene, I thought of that picture of, you've got a bed in this room with all this stuff in it, and it looks like the room has no walls. There's nothing limiting. But in reality, it's a very closed, tiny space. And that's what Andy experienced was, you do this article, you write this article, and you can write about whatever you want, wherever the wind takes you. Nope, not politics. Nope, not women's rights. Nope, not this. She's like, you can write about shoes or clothes that fit your body style. This is a room with the walls painted like clouds. Like, I've got no walls, but in reality, it's a closet.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving. And so she's going, the super cheesy chase down scene in New York City. But he catches her. They stop on a bridge, and Ben, who's read her article, he's saying that she loves him, asks if it's true.
Ben, please.
Is this true? Or are you just trying to sell magazines?
I meant every word.
Well, where are you going?
I have an interview.
Yeah, in Washington. I know. Where are you going?
Ben, it's the only place I can
I'm going right what I want to write.
No, I'm not buying that. You can write anywhere. I think you're running away.
Why don't you save your mind games for your next bet, okay? I am not running away.
Bullshit.
Excuse me?
You heard me. Bullshit.
Hey, lady, what do you want to do?
Take the lady's luggage back to her place. She has alternate transportation.
You call my bluff?
You bet I am.
Ben knew her heart for him, so he had to express it for her. But he could see her. He saw her and who she was, knew that she was running away. And I loved it. Bullshit. Because he wasn't calling her out with saying, on one hand, yes. But with that one word, he brought her back to the family, to the home.
Exactly.
And said, remember who we were. Remember this.
Yep.
Remember. And she couldn't leave because she was running away. Because it was painful. Because it's going to be painful. But when you stick it out, when you are persistent and you endure, we're called to endure. We're called to undergo trials and all this stuff. But that is the testing of our faith. It's the testing of our love. And going through the fire, and we come out on the other side, and we know that what we have is true and honest and is a diamond.
What we got on the other end is the connection we've been longing for. And everything that is worth anything takes hard work. I know we get salvation for free. It's true. I can't earn salvation, but I work it out with fear and trembling. You endure, rejoice when you come under various trials. And I'm not saying I earn my salvation, but I'm saying that clinging to God, man, sometimes he breaks your hip, man, and says, let me go. And you say, no, I'm not letting you go. And God made a nation out of that guy because he wouldn't let him go. He was a liar and he was a cheat and he was a manipulator. And yet that moment where he says, I'm not letting you go. I know who you are and I'm not letting you go. I don't care if you break my hip. I don't care what happens, which is what he says to Andy. I'll do anything. That's how our relationship is with God, because God, that's how committed God is. God's not going anywhere. He's not far from anyone. That's what the Bible says. He's not far from anyone. He's a step away. But we think he is, and we believe lies. And sometimes we have to get past those lies and deal with stuff, and in our marriage, for us to be Christ in the church, so we have to get through that stuff. And because we're human, and marriage was not meant to be fun and games. Marriage was meant for us to express Christ and his church. It's a hard road sometimes, and there's sacrifice, and it doesn't mean you put up with abuse or anything. I don't want anybody to hear that. Sometimes it's right to go. It's one of those things where on the other side of sticking it out, we build character. That's what James says. That's why we stick it out through trials and temptations, because on the other side of it is the character that is going to be built. And that's why we can rejoice. It's because God is after character. And that's what we get when in our marriage, and we can build that character. And so, yeah, I love it. And I love that part of the movie, because then what you get is a marriage that can withstand anything. Yeah. And there's a security in that. And there's so much joy and connection from that, like a diamond.
So that's been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, that epic, manly, masculine
epic
movie. So may you all enjoy celebrating the romance of the season, but remember that behind the romance and behind the games is the diamond that you're actually looking and longing for. So hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?